As always here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go through a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. Today's subject we're going to be going over the latest news and what to sort of expect in 9.1.5. I believe I got that right, yes. And also what is coming in Phase 2 for TBC Classic. So we'll obviously start off with the weekly stuff. So this week you have on Retail WoW, you have Wrath of the Lich King Time Walking. So these are dungeons from the Wrath of the Lich King expansion. These are Anchorage? No, not Anchorage. Temple of Ankahet. You have stuff like Old or Halls of Reflection, stuff like that. The world boss for this week is Nurgash Muckformed in Revendreth. So be sure to hop over there, get your anima, get your free, piece of gear, as well as Morgeth in the Maw. Make sure you definitely kill him for, better pieces of gear. The mythic affixes for this week are Tyrannical, so bosses and the mobs that bosses spawn HP and damage are increased. Inspiring, so you either CC that inspiring mob or kill it fast because it buffs all of the others and they can't be interrupted. Quaking, make sure you stop casting and don't stand next to people with this. And Tormented, which is the seasonal affix this season. The dungeon quests for this week are Sanguine Depths and The Other Side. The PvP brawl is a Warsong Scramble. You have 3 Warsong Gulch flags and it's the first to capture 10 flags. And the PvP quests for this week are for rated battlegrounds as well as random battlegrounds. So very nice and easy. You also have mythic dungeons coming up this week, I believe. I believe they come out tomorrow as of this podcast coming out. So be sure, actually it'll be today. Mythic Dungeon Invitationals come out when the podcast goes live. So be sure to check that out if you are interested in watching the Dungeon Invitationals and seeing how people run through them dungeons in ridiculously fast time, by the way. It's always good fun to watch and learn. But for this week, we're going to start on the normal stuff, or the retail stuff, which is the 9.1.5. So we obviously have found out many different things regarding the patch or up and coming patch, and I'm going to go through as many as I can here because there is absolutely loads. But Blizzard seem to have just thrown everything at us for this patch, mainly because, with the recent stuff going on in the background with regards to all of the investigations at Blizzard, they probably feel like their player base needs something to hang on to give them hope, because there are a lot of people who work really tough or who work really hard at Blizzard. They put their love into the game, they absolutely adore the game, they play it themselves, and they don't want to see the game die off, and they want the player base to be happy, as they want to be happy as well playing the game. So they've implemented a lot of changes in this patch, and the first one being is Legion Time Walking with Mythic Plus. Now, Legion was the first expansion to give us Mythic Plus, and Mythic Plus, if you are unaware, is basically the dungeon difficulty ranges from normal to heroic to mythic, and then it's Mythic Plus. So normal is your normal dungeon, heroic is a little tougher, mythic is tougher, and then Mythic Plus is when you add certain percentages of health and damage as well as affixes into the dungeon when you hit a certain threshold. So when you hit Mythic, like a +5 key, you'll get one affix that mobs might have. So it might be quaking for this week, for example. So you just need to watch out for the quaking. If you hit like +10, you'll get 2 affixes and that kind of thing. And that's when the seasonal affixes start. So they get tougher and tougher. The mobs get more HP, they deal more damage. The mechanics really do matter when you get to the high ranks of Mythic Plus. But no one's quite sure how they're going to do Mythic Plus with Time Walking. They're either going to scale it with a certain amount of item level, certain pieces of gear throughout the dungeon. So no matter what Mythic Plus you're doing, it will only give a certain item level, maybe like a Mythic 0, but maybe it might just give decent like pieces of gear, or it would be like 5 levels below what it is in Shadowlands Mythic Plus. So if you're doing a +10 key for Legion, it would be a +5 Shadowlands piece of gear, that kind of quality, potentially. So there's many ways that they can go about this. Obviously there's new mounts being added with Legion Time Walking, and they might just add these Mythic Pluses into the pool of Mythic dungeons for Shadowlands, which would be absolutely insane, because that means that you can get Battle for Azeroth Mythic dungeons as well, and it gives the player base so many more opportunities and more decisions to make when going through for Mythic dungeons. So basically you get a chance, or you get a choice of 30 different dungeons instead of, say, the usual 10 that you have, or something like that, within an expansion alone. We also have improved covenant swapping. Now, this is actually a massive deal. So, improved covenant swapping, obviously, when you picked your covenant at the very start of Shadowlands, it was a very big deal. And, they said that in order to switch covenants, you would have to do certain quests. You'd have to start and grind all that renown again and stuff like that. But with having to grind 80 odd renown, it grinds you down, and it really puts you off of even testing out the others. It really makes it so that you'd have to make alts to put into that covenant, but to level alts and gear alts as well is just insanely difficult at the moment in 9.1. So improved covenant swapping basically means that you can switch covenants. When you hit a certain renown threshold, they will not take away that renown from the covenant. I believe that's how it's going to work. And you can also utilise stuff that you've bought in the other covenants. So this is transmog and stuff like that. Don't get me started on how the sort of sanctum might look. You might be having to rebuild your covenant sanctum and stuff like that. But that isn't as much of a problem with the amount of anima that you can gain in the Shadowlands now, with multiple 250 anima drops, absolutely everything. So this is a really good improvement, by the way, because I've been looking to switch my druid to Maldraxxus, and it's the only thing that's always put me off is the renown and having to grind that and stuff. But there's really nothing that I could do about it until now. Until seeing this and hearing about this, it's really helped and really given me some hope in terms of switching covenants. Another thing that they're doing with covenants and sort of stuff based around covenants is they're removing the conduit energy. And what the conduit energy is basically whenever you wanted to switch out a conduit within your soulbind, it would cost a little sort of energy gem, that kind of thing. And you'd have 10 of these, and they'd recharge every 24 hours. So if you used one at 6 p.m, it would be back at 6 p.m. the next day. And if you used one at 9 p.m, it would be back at 9 p.m. the next day. So they all have their own individual cooldowns, but they're just getting rid of this completely so that you can freely move about your conduits in and out, and obviously not have to stick with certain things for the day because you don't have enough conduit energy. So you can really mix and match with stuff like this. Legendary item recycling is another big thing. So I personally am not affected by this, but many people don't necessarily like Torghast. Many people don't farm it for the Soul Ash. I'm quite lucky in terms of I'm a Boomkin, and they seem to be one of the easiest to run Torghast with. So I've gotten a lot of Soul Ash in spare and in absolute droves and stuff like that. But most people don't want to do it because it is very grueling and tough for their either class or character, or they just don't like the content. So legendary items that you've built in the past, you can take them back to the Rune Carver, and he will basically disenchant them into the soul dust that you, or soul ash, that you originally gave him to craft that legendary. So you can get a full refund, 100% by the way, which I think is quite insane, because I thought that just like 50% would be more than enough, but no, it is 100% refund on these legendary items. So in terms of what that means for like myself, I have 4 or 5 different legendaries that I don't use, so I'm going to take them back and I'll get about 15,000 soul ash for these legendaries, because they're all at like 225 item level, 235 item level. So I've spent a lot of soul ash on these, but I just don't need the soul ash. So I'm hoping that in the future I can actually utilize the soul ash a lot more rather than just send it to other characters. But the other characters might need it, because knowing what's coming in 9.1.5, it's not looking too bad to gear up some ults, I'll say that. We are also getting new allied race customizations. So the ones that have been data mined and put on the PTR at the moment are Lightforged Draenei as well as Void Elves. They have multiple hair customizations, tentacle customization. What are they? Yeah, tentacle like in the hair for Void Elves. Horn customizations, hair customizations, skin customizations. They have absolutely everything, and it's really good to see that the latest sort of races get these little bit of updates to keep them almost on top of things, keep them fine-tuned. Unlike the old races that were left for multiple expansions, these were left for one expansion, and then they got this little update. So that's really good to see that they're keeping on top of that. Covenant campaign skip. So I believe how this is going to work is that when you've done a campaign on, say, one of your characters, and you've seen that entire campaign, you can skip that Covenant campaign. So if you've done one for Kyrian and Night Fae, you can skip it on all of your ults. But if you suddenly go Mount Draxus and have not done it on any character, then you have to do that Covenant campaign. And when you skip this, obviously, you're going to be worried that you might not get the renown that you want. You might lose out on certain pieces of gear, rep, whatever. But apparently you get all of the renown, and I'm not too sure about the gear. You might get the gear as well, but I can't be too sure about that. The renown I definitely know at the moment. Some of these things are not on PTR yet, so it's tough to know what's going to come in the future of 9.1.5. For another update, you also have Legacy Raid tuning, and what this basically is it tunes old raids. So it's going to be Battle for Azeroth, I believe, that they're tuning, and this also increases the amount of items that drop. So people will be looking to farm Battle for Azeroth done or raids for certain mounts, transmogs and stuff like that in the near future, because gear does exceed these raids eventually. At the beginning of Shadowlands, I tried to walk into Battle for Azeroth, couldn't do it, straight up couldn't do it. So we're probably getting to that point where we might be able to, with the gear that we've got and stuff like that. So they're starting to tune the BFA raids to give more loot, easier times, and yeah, better for everyone, for transmog collectors, for mount collectors, stuff like that. We obviously have new toys, mounts and travel forms are a big one. So new toys and mounts we are unsure of at the moment, but a few of them are stuff like recolors and stuff. We obviously have a couple more like unicorn mounts or whatever they're called, I believe. But the travel forms are the biggest one that I saw, mainly because I am a druid main. I play druid. So new travel forms are very rare to come by. I mean, we have 3 travel forms in, WoW's entirety. You have a cheetah, you have a doe, and you have a stag, like travel form. And then you have the 2 flight forms, which is the normal flight form, and you have the lunar wing flight form, or whatever it's called, from Legion. And that was just that was your Legion class mount, by the way. So having these new travel forms is really exciting for me. So there's loads that have been data mined right now. One of them is called Mask of the Duskfang Raven, and you turn into a raven. And this is the biggest one that I find amazing, by the way, because a raven has never been in WoW in like a form at all. The only form it has ever been in is for the Guardian, and when he turns into a raven with, Atiash, the great stuff for the Guardian and stuff like that. So lore-wise, turning into a raven is very insane, because it's for this insanely powerful sort of protector of Azeroth and stuff like that. So to be able to transform into that, just, I can do that. It's really cool, and it's really something that I've always wanted to be able to do. We have Mark of the Gloomstalker Dreadbat. So this is a flying one as well, and you just turn into a bat. Like, that's pretty cool, pretty badass if you're a Venthyr and stuff like that. You want to look and feel the part. You have, running forms. You have Mark of the Twilight Runestag. You see loads of Runestags running about in Ardenweald. You can now become one. It is basically a buffed up version of the stag, more colourful, more vibrant, and everything like that. You have Mark of the Regal Dreadbat, another colour variation of the bat. You have Mark of the Sable Arden Moth, so one of the moth creatures within Ardenweald as well. You can transform into that as your flight form. Mark of the Shimmering Arden Moth, again another moth flight form. And you have a Mark of the Midnight Runestag, another colour variation of the Runestag. And these pictures that are on sort of Wowhead and stuff like that, do go check them out. It's absolutely amazing, and I just can't wait for the travel forms. Honestly, they're going to be absolutely insane, and just can't wait. You also have talents and ability buffs. So obviously with every single patch there is fine-tuning to damage abilities, healing abilities, defensive abilities, absolutely everything. They look at fine-tuning. Hopefully they look at monks and look at spinning crane kick, because that ability is busted and needs to be removed from the game completely. It's ridiculous. But there's going to be loads of numbers tweaking, so we don't know anything yet what's being looked at. This will be towards the later end of the PTR, but definitely keep an eye out and just pray that your class gets buffed instead of nerfed. That's all you can do. And this is the last one that they have, but reporting improvements. Now, no one quite knows what this means yet, but because the only way that it's going to improve is if they hire more people to look at the reports that come in. Because throughout loads of WoW Classic, WoW, and stuff like that, there's absolutely loads of reports that come in daily, most likely for either, a name change, or just the language that people have been subjected to, or even just botting, stuff like that, multi-boxing, which is against TOS now, I believe. So there's loads of different reporting or reports coming in, but they just don't have the personnel to actually look at them and, spend a lot of time on them. So I'm not too sure how this reporting improvements is going to work without actually hiring more GMs, like game masters, to look into the reports. But we'll only know for sure when the patch comes out and we see it for ourselves. So that was the last that they obviously put into the sort of blue post that they gave, but we have found out another thing since then. So obviously with the travel forms coming out, they're also bringing out more soul shapes for Night Fae players, and these are absolutely amazing, by the way. So they found 21 new soul shape forms, and these include critter soul shapes. Now the critter soul shapes are very small, so they can only be used in rested areas, because if they were used in, say, an arena, it would give you an advantage compared to just using a normal soul shape. So, it makes kind of sense doing that. So these are the ones that we know for sure at the moment. So you have an owl soul, you have a boar, you have a cloud serpent, you have a Jormungandr soul, which is Jormungandr, I believe, the world serpent or whatever. You have a sporebat, you have an eagle, an alpaca soul, which is absolutely incredible, by the way, a ram soul, a goat, a surid soul, a frog soul, a surilisk hatchling soul, a prairie dog, so these are like the critters, a cricket, a porcupine, a snake, a rat, a bunny, cat, otter, and a chicken. Who doesn't want to be a prairie dog? Who doesn't want to be like a bunny? Who doesn't want to be an otter? Who doesn't want to be a damn Jormungandr soul? A giant serpent? Who doesn't want to be an alpaca? It's all amazing, all of these soul shapes, and I just hope they make them very accessible, because playing around with your soul shapes as a Night Fae is probably one of the more fun things to do, because you might want, you might feel like being a hippogriff soul shape in one game, one arena, and then you might go back to like a wolf hawk or something like that in another. You can really spice it up, and apparently there is going to be a random feature on this, so every time you use soul shape you will be a random soul shape. So that's always nice to have, because you always get a random choice in the matter. Moving on to Classic, there's not as much to sort of go into, but because it's very much bare bones, you know what you're getting. But, Phase 2 is rolling around. It's the first big phase of TBC, so they're obviously releasing a lot of stuff with it. And the first two things are obviously the latest raids, so Serpent Shrine Cavern and Tempest Keep. And these raids are very big in scale compared to something like Mag and Gruul raids. Karazhan is obviously, in terms of longevity, about similar to these two raids, but these are 25-man raids, and these give really good loot. They have really good bosses. They have some iconic bosses like Lady Vash. They have Kel'Thas in the Eye raid. So many different big bosses, great mechanics, great raids. Definitely check them out if you can. They are absolutely amazing. You have new daily quests coming in. I'm not too sure about what dailies, but we will soon find out. There are new reputations, obviously, that come along with, say, like the Eye and Serpent Shrine Cavern. You have Tier 5 class sets. So Tier 4 was what we had in Phase 1. Tier 5 is obviously the step above, and you're looking to get them and build up your entire set at the end of Phase 2 and 3, having this entire set of Tier 5. It looks really cool. Some of the pieces are absolutely amazing. They're obviously mostly some people's best in slot, so definitely look at collecting them when you can. I'm not too sure what this one means, but new rewards, I'm not really too sure what that one means. I tried to look into it, but I couldn't find anything at the moment. So Arena Season 2 is obviously starting as well in Phase 2. So all the Phase 1 gear will obviously go on sale a bit, and you can buy it with normal honour, I think. Potentially, I'm not too sure, don't quote me on that. But you can buy it cheaper or something like that. And the new Season 2 gear will be implemented and put into the game, and it will cost what the old Season 1 gear cost. So make sure that you do grind out your, arenas, get the arena points that you want to buy them purchases, to buy that gear. I couldn't speak there. Guild banks. Now this is the one that everyone's enjoying. Guild banks are essential in WoW. They help guilds operate. They help guilds build legendary weapons, Thunder Furies, Sulfuruses, stuff like that. They act as a sort of central hub of trading within the guild, that kind of thing, for raid mats, raid consumables, that kind of thing. So guild banks, actually having people able to deposit stuff, having people able to, take stuff out and withdraw from like a raiding tab, that kind of thing is really helpful. You don't have to sort of request stuff from the person who's running the guild bank. It is all very much automated now, and it just requires it being set up in the first place. So definitely a massive improvement that they made within WoW, because guild banks are absolutely insane and should definitely not be overlooked at all. You have the group browser, so this isn't to be confused with the looking for group in retail. What you do is you basically pick what you want, so maybe a heroic, and you get to pick what sort of heroic that you want to do, and you just sign yourself up. You'll be put in sort of a list, and if people are making a group, they can look at this list and pick people from that list that they want to invite or message, that kind of thing. And you can do this for battlegrounds, you can do this for arenas, raids, absolutely everything pretty much. So, and it is very good. It's not a bad method. I prefer the looking for group if you're sort of just wanting to do a dungeon quickly and stuff like that, if you're like leveling an ult. But in terms of like finding a raid and finding sort of heroics, I don't think it's bad. I think it's quite a nice little system, and people will have to actually actively sort or find you and talk to you to sort of get to know you, to invite you to the raid, what spec you are, how much gear do you have, do you have consumables, that kind of thing. And last but not least, but a new arena bulletin board. I have no idea what that is, but it sounds amazing. I'm not going to lie to you. Now, the bulletin board sounds to me like it might be a quest that you get, or you might have to do a certain quest within a week, a weekly sort of thing, maybe play 15 games in threes, maybe something like that. But I'm not too sure at all. And again, I've never heard of anything of such a thing. But again, it's very much, you're looking at the 2 raids, the arena season coming out, and a guild bank for Outlands or TBC, because everything else is very much self-explanatory. It'll be minor things within the game that you might not even notice are there the first time you log in. For patch 9.1.5, the PTR has gone live, so you can definitely check it out now and log in. Again, not everything is there at the moment, but they will be adding stuff throughout the weeks leading up to the latest patch. And for TBC, the patch comes out on the 15th of September. That is when you can actively raid, but at the moment, the pre-patch has been downloaded, guild banks are out, and the smaller things within the patch are out. They just have to turn a click and turn a key. I was going to say flip a switch and turn a key at the same time, but I was going to come out with they have to turn a key or something like that. But they have to flip a switch and you can enter the raid. Well, if you're attuned for the raid, and don't even get me started on that. So there's a lot of good things to look out for within WoW in the next month or so. The PTR for 9.1.5 is looking really amazing, not going to lie. And TBC, with the raiding coming out, with the new arena season, guild banks, it's looking up. And, we're sort of a third of the way through TBC when that comes out. That's the scary thing. And then Wrath is just around the corner, I imagine. So that will be really enjoyable. That will be a good one. Wrath is going to be absolutely amazing if they go through with it, which I don't see why they wouldn't. But that is all for this week. Thank you all very much for listening. I do love doing these podcasts for you. I take the time to, find out what podcasts I'm doing week in, week out. It really does help if you just rate the video, oh my god, rate the podcast, leave any sort of comments, questions that you might have, any questions that you would want to hear on a podcast that I might want to answer, then please feel free to send them in. I would be more than happy to answer questions. It would make me so happy to just know that people are interacting with it. It'll be great. Obviously, you can look at the Patreon and buy me a coffee, stuff like that, to support the podcast even further. All the links can be found at the website. Thank you all very much for listening as always, and go with Valor, friend. Goodbye all.